Oh, hey, I'm Josiah. Welcome back to Retro Rewind. And lately, I was just thinking about my favorite game, Super Mario Galaxy 2, and how many great memories it's given us. Funnily enough, I got this game a while ago, and in 5 years, it's gonna be considered retro. I'm done. What's the point? What on earth are you talking about, Jacob? Also, why are you wearing a blue flannel? These stupid retro games. They're old, glitchy, everyone and their grandma bashes on the old graphics. It just doesn't seem worth it to invest in these anymore. One, that didn't answer my question. Two, are you kidding me? Retro games shaped the gaming landscape as it is today. If we didn't have those, we wouldn't have what we have now. I don't see the point in owning these when you can have something like Nintendo Switch Online, or just get an emulator on a computer. Shh, they'll hear you, the Nintendo ninjas are always listening. Still, I don't see the point in owning these anymore. You know what? I'm gonna set the record straight. I'm gonna prove that retro gaming still matters today in some capacity. You really think so? I know so. And for one last time this year, let's get this over with.
3, 2, 1, go!
I'm 99.99999% sure that at least one of you watching this video right now have played a retro video game. But somehow the numbers just don't add up! And with that, there are countless retro games just floating around on this planet. Not literally though, that would be a fire hazard. Gosh dang it, every Wednesday! Now, there's a lot of debate on what games are considered retro and what are just old. Well, for this, I'm gonna put the term retro into anything before 2005. So this does include the GameCube, OG Xbox, PS2, and for the one person asking, yes, this does include the Gizmondo widescreen. Yes! Let's start out with the obvious when talking about retro games, the Atari 2600, otherwise known as Grandpa Can Play Games Too? Wrong! The Atari 2600 was one of the first and greatest advancements in video game technology, and for its time, it was a good reason. It set the standard for video games and entertainment for generations to come. But, yes, the video game crash of 1983. One of the worst times to be a gamer, but one of the best if you're a narcissist. Yeah, the Atari 2600 wasn't doing too well, due to a sudden surge in video game consoles, video games themselves, and of course nobody knew how to play any of them. Personally, I don't blame them, because I know as much as the next guy I wouldn't want to buy a game called 3D Tic-Tac-Toe. Are you kidding me? I'm telling you, man, some of these games were pennied out, and still nobody bought these stupid games. Because of that, the Atari 2600 is often looked over when topics of the best retro consoles are brought up, which is different from gaming savior, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now this is some good stuff. You've got classics like the original Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. It didn't have 3D Tic-Tac-Toe. Thank the Lord! Yeah, the Nintendo Entertainment System did very well on the retro gaming market, and many people, including myself, would say that this is exactly where retro gaming truly started. If it wasn't for the NES, many people wouldn't have been able to experience gaming the way it was intended. Personally, the NES left such an impact on the world, there's no possible way that this thing couldn't have left at least a smidge of impact on gaming. Not even Universe 721? Nope. Universe 426? Not a chance. What about 516? Jacob, you're giving me an aneurysm. Stop it. Good. What? Oh, I said, we in the hood. Oh yeah! So in retrospect, yes, the NES does matter when we're talking about retro games, but at the same time, I think it's time we move forward a generation to the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Yes, this has got to be one of my favorite video game topics ever. Personally, I like the Genesis much more than the SNES. Really? I personally like the Super Nintendo a whole lot more. I wish blood shed upon your home in generations to come. Anyways, Bomberman, guys, am I right? The Super Nintendo and Genesis fight is a console war that lasted far beyond each system's lifespan, all thanks to the dedicated fans like myself. On one hand, you have Nintendo's juggernaut with Super Mario World, their best 2D Zelda game, A Link to the Past, and a game that could render 32-bit graphics with Star Fox. On the other hand, with Sega, you get Sonic? Yeah, Sonic, the blue blur that could rival Mario and help Sega cement its place in gaming history. I mean, like, come on, Mario versus Sonic? That's like putting a Hedgehog against a plumber in a speed race. That's probably because you are. Yeah, that makes sense. Both systems were titans back in their heyday, but the question still remains, do these things matter? And the answer is an unsurprising and resounding yes. The games on these systems definitely defined an era. They gave us some of the most memorable franchises, and they definitely hold up today. Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger, Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, all these games aren't just nostalgic, they're good. The truth is, these games aren't just relics of the past, they're experiences that transcend time. And whether it's the NES, SNES, or even the Genesis, Genesis, they laid the groundwork for everything that we enjoy today. Sure, some people might see them as old or outdated, but I see them as timeless. Best part, you don't have to take my word for it. Just pick one up and play. See, just look at these amazing points I'm making. Yeah, but I'm not convinced yet. What do you mean you're not convinced? For every good game, there's 2 bad games to follow it up. I don't think I'm so convinced that retro gaming is the way to go. I think we have to go a little bit deeper. Hey, I'm not against it. I'm not editing this video. Dude, stop! So, on to the Nintendo 64? On to the 64. What do you get when you take 2 dimensions and add another axis? I don't know! Well, according to my math, you get the Nintendo 64 and a critical case of scoliosis. Dang it! The Nintendo 64, released in 1996, was not only the titan in the video game industry, it not only defined what it meant to be a gamer today, it not only birthed 3D gaming, it could also be covered in ketchup. We'll get to you. I know I keep saying it, but this thing was revolutionary. The N64 gave us amazing experience after amazing experience, like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Smash 64, Goldeneye, Dual Heroes. Excuse me, did you just say Ocarina of Time? There weren't too many games on the system due to the proprietary cartridge format the system used when compared to other systems like the PlayStation, which used discs. But the games that were on the system did not disappoint their parents. Unlike someone we know. What? Overall, there were only about 388 games released for the system, which might seem like a lot, but compared to the 360's 2,154, Nintendo's really got to step up their game, okay? Because we've got Diddy Kong Racing. Are you seriously hating on one of the most beloved N64 games of all time? No. You know you're gonna get crucified for doing that, right? Yeah. So what do I think? Is the N64 important to retro gaming? What kind of question is that? Of course it is. Well, unless you want to own more games like, dear God, anything but that. That's all the retro Nintendo home consoles, but we still got 2 other companies that we're looking at. That's right, Heinz and ExpressVPN. Starting out with Sega, the absolute juggernaut. Almost. The Sega Master System was their attempt, heavy air quotes there by the way, of trying to compete with Nintendo, the absolute juggernaut of the gaming industry. Obviously in America, Sega lost that battle, and the NES lived on to be the best-selling 8-bit system of the console generation. Funny how that works out. Well, what do you expect when your mascot is named something funky like Alex Kidd? Well, not this! So does the Sega Master System really matter when it comes to gaming? In my opinion, not really. I mean, sure, the legacy it left paved the way for the Sega Genesis, but the Master System itself was a commercial failure everywhere it went except for Mexico. Yeah, the Master System was still getting games, even in 2024, out in Mexico. So let me rephrase that. Unless you've got a wall separating 2 countries, the Master System did not do well in your area. Yeah, that isn't gonna age well, so here's a photo of a cute gorilla. Doesn't that make up for everything? Anyways, on to Sega's first masterpiece, the Genesis. This bad boy was a beast. 16-bit graphics, Nintendo had only what, 8? That's double the bits. Do I know what a bit is? Nope. But I know there's more of them, baby. Woo! Now I know what you're thinking. Josiah, didn't the Genesis compete with the Super Nintendo? Well, to that I say, do your research, you bum. In reality, the Genesis was designed to compete with the NES. Just when that happened, a year before in America, Nintendo heard about this and released the Super Nintendo. And you know they went, we're screwed, we're absolutely screwed. What do you mean your son has a Crayola crayon set? We'll take it! Released on August 14th, 1989 in North America, the Sega Genesis was phenomenal, boasting specs that had never been seen before on any other home console, or anything like that for that matter. The Sega Genesis had games that nobody would ever expect, with amazing games like Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, Sonic Spinball. Yeah, it was pretty evident that this system was really just a Sonic machine that played Sonic 2 and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Gosh dang it, it's just another Sonic game! So does the Sega Genesis matter when it comes to retro gaming? Yeah, absolutely. Even though the system didn't do the best when coming to selections of games, it still paved the way for Mario's arch rival during the 90s and set Sega's name in stone forever. Finally, let's talk about the PS1, or the original PlayStation if you're a sophisticated being of nature. Like some of us sophisticated people of nature. It's wet. Much like the Genesis, the PS1 was aimed to be more of a teenage and adult user base when compared to the more family-friendly approach Nintendo was taking, with games like Crash Bandicoot, Gran Turismo, Monopoly. I heard Monopoly, take my money! The system was meant to be a surefire hit, selling, of course it sold that many. Funnily enough, these were not all from Monopoly. 120 million systems. How? The PS1 was revolutionary for multiple reasons. It might not have started the use of discs in gaming, but it definitely popularized the medium for gaming companies that aren't you know who you are. Not only that, but PlayStation equally gave us analog thumbsticks on controllers, which made the 3D games on the system feel much less wonky when compared to that of a D-pad. So is the PS1 important to retro gaming? Well, with sales figures like that, I'm financially inclined to say sure. So does that mean PlayStation is better than Nintendo? 1, don't finish that sentence. 2, we've covered every single major Nintendo console and the PS1. Do you finally accept that gaming, especially retro gaming, is important? I can admit, retro gaming is pretty cool, but wouldn't it be easier to own everything on one system? You would think! So now we're delving into the age-old question. Why play on old media? Or how my uncle who has dementia would say, for one, at least in my circumstance, it gives you the most authentic way to play these games, especially when compared to a 72-inch flat screen OLED 8K 240Hz display, all because you wanted to play Mario Party 4. I like wasting money. Now, of course, some companies like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony all offer to some extent older retro games on their platforms, whether that be through a subscription service like Nintendo Switch Online, streaming through Xbox Game Pass, or what does PlayStation have? What I'm trying to say is playing retro games on a modern console in a modern setting can feel ultimately, well, wrong. It doesn't feel right to play Captain Skyhawk on the Nintendo Switch, but unfortunately and legally, that's the only way you can play this game without owning the game. This proves my point that retro games are still better to be physically owned, rather than rented from a big conglomerate company. That's a whole other problem, not just with retro games, but subscription services as a whole. Companies like Xbox will offer games on Game Pass and everyone loves it, and out of absolutely nowhere, they'll just get rid of it. Essentially, you're paying monthly to get smashed over the head.
Thankfully, I would never do something like that. Is for me.
Overall, I know I've said it a bunch, but retro gaming still matters to me. Even though others might not think the same way, I still respect, love, and cherish these games for what they are, and what they have been, and what they always will be, for me and for generations to come. So does retro gaming still matter? Yeah, I'd say it does. If we didn't have retro games, I wouldn't have anything on this shelf. It's totally fine if you don't want to have to go back and play all these old games, but for me, it's perfect. If anything, retro gaming means more to me now than it ever has in the past. I'm so thankful for the experiences and for the people who will be able to play these for years and generations to come. A simple yeah would have been fine. You know I like to be extra. Don't I ever. Sometimes it randomly feels like you'll break out into song. Don't you worry, I almost did that for the Mario 3D Land review, and we didn't really have the time or the power for it, but now we don't care. The heck, man? So what are you gonna play next? I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. Well, that's all the time that we have for you Retro Rewinders today. Stay safe, stay warm, stay watching, stay retro. We'll catch you guys on the next level.